Police, fire, or medical?
Fire.
Where do you need fire at?
Corner of Bluff and Hogland Road.
911, please, fire, or medical?
Okay, I'm sure we need ambulances.
Okay, where are you at? You on Bluff Road?
I'm on Bluff Road, yes.
Okay, just a second for me.
911, police, fire, or medical?
Yeah, their car caught on fire.
Is it still on fire?
It's on fire right now.
Do you know if they're inside a vehicle?
I don't know. I'm going to look right now.
Okay. 911, police, fire, or medical?
Fire.
Where do you need fire at?
Sandy, Oregon.
Okay, where at?
It's on Bluff Road.
Right. We had a car accident over there, and we're getting report now.
Okay, they've got a fully involved vehicle fire.
It's a blue four-door vehicle that's on fire. Okay.
Just got a report from a motor. It says of a naked man walking down 362nd. Looks like he's all cut up.
Have a naked male walking down 362nd, all cut up.
I'm going to stand by. I've got a long gun, a shotgun. I'm going to stand by with the fire.
No, he's not okay. Whoever was driving that was not okay.
Okay, we got people on the way. Thank you.
Here they come. They're coming. See the police now.
On September 8th last year, a young man was killed in Sandy by a deputy from Clackamas County and a police officer from Sandy.
Witnesses say he was naked and burned after his car caught fire.
Now, when police were not able to subdue him, even with tasers, they shot and killed him.
Every year, countless people are killed by police violence in this country. Usually when this happens, there's a pattern of cover-up and deception that you'll see played out in the story of what happened to Fouad Kaady. They often claim that the person had a weapon or made a threatening gesture or somehow had it coming.
Some people thought he might have had a gun.
Toxicology results for Fouad Kaady have not been made available yet.
And the big question tonight, was Kaady on drugs? One question remains unanswered. Was Fouad Kaady on drugs?
This is the way they justified themselves. This has all been framed through the voices of the police and the corporate media.
Yeah, this is Uber 93. A couple things. Can we make sure to put a hold on this CAD from the press? Okay, message Mark to hold the tape from the press.
He's naked. This makes it here. This is good news.
That's what you call really bad drugs, yeah.
Naked, so it wasn't an MVA. Naked, oh, this is good stuff. But you know what? It's where
he wasn't naked when he did that.
Put your light on. But he's naked now, so it's just getting better.
Oh, yes.
All right. Well, thanks for the info.
All right,
I'll try and contact Alice Lasher. Is she all over this? Because she's their PIO.
Yeah, I know. I'm not quite sure how or why you got paged, but okay.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Sir, thank you. Bye.
Marcus, Jamie Carn.
Jamie.
Hi. Wild and crazy. Wild and crazy time, people.
Yes, it is.
All right. So trying to help out media here a little bit, keep them off your back. Did they shoot naked guy? Because
they shot him. Yes. I don't know who.
Yeah. So he's been shot. Naked guy has been shot. Newt told me that.
I think he's dead. Let me see.
Is he dead?
Let me see. I'm looking.
So we got dead naked guy.
Yes, naked guy's dead.
Naked guy is dead. Okay, naked guy can be found at what street?
Currently he's laying on 362nd near Bluff.
362nd and Bluff Road.
Yes.
I copy that.
Alice is out there, and I think the sheriff's office is getting their PIO.
All right, perfect. That's all I need.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, man. Well, that's going to make great media coverage.
Yeah, oh, yeah. This is definitely one that's going to be on the news tonight.
Yeah, no kidding.
Up till now, we haven't had anyone else's story about this. It's all been framed through the voices of the police and the corporate media.
Hi, Mark. This is Suzanne at CCOM.
How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I was instructed by Heisen to get a hold of you folks.
Yeah, the tape is already seized. Everything's already seized on. It's not going to be released.
Okay.
This is the actual recording of Officer Willard communicating with CCOM from the moment he stepped out of his car to the moment that Fouad Kaady lay dead at his feet.
Edward 2.
To Edward 2.
03 medical. And a couple more cars here.
Copy, being confirmed location. I know it shows 362 and Van Meter crossing. Edward 2, confirm your location.
Edward 2, can you confirm your location on 362?
Edward 2, code 3, medical shots fired.
28 seconds.
Whenever a police officer murdered or shoot a citizen in the community, it always 2 or 3 days later before anyone have access to that officer. You know why? Because they get together and they try to make their story fit so that when the media get the story, it fit the way in which that these folks over here that call themselves law enforcement officers, they make the story in such a way that when you hear it in the media, you say, oh, the officer had to defend himself. The officer have a right to shoot because his life was threatened.
Police were justified in the shooting death of an unarmed man last month outside of Sandy.
He was unarmed, but officers say he was out of control and threatening to kill them.
Kaady was acting erratically and failed to follow orders, and that is when police officers opened fire.
Officers say Kaady threatened him and a taser failed to work. Kaady threatened him and a taser did not work.
Officers attempted to subdue Kaady, but say when their tasers had no effect, they opened fire.
We don't have anyone else's story about this.
We only have the police who investigated themselves, even taking just their own words. When they approached this man, he was sitting on the ground. He was, to quote both officers, he was in a catatonic state. He was in fact in shock. Both officers admit that they knew that he was unarmed, and both say that they knew how badly injured he was.
The man that we were directing our attention at was completely nude, sitting about a foot off of the shoulder in the northbound lane of 362nd. And he was sitting Indian style with kind of bent down with his hands down in front of him, just like this.
In front of a nursery area on the roadway, saw a naked male subject sitting on the ground, kind of what we called in elementary school Indian style, and he had his hands tucked between his legs and his head down and was kind of just sitting there, rocking, just sitting there, just sitting there, just sitting there, sitting there, sitting there, sitting there, sitting there.
He was sitting in the roadway, and I described his Indian style with his legs crossed on his bottom, with his hands in his lap and his head down, almost as if he was in a, I don't know, as if he was in a prayer kind of mode. He was down like that, looking down into his own lap. He was covered with blood, covered with blood. Head to toe, every portion of his body had some blood on it, covered with blood.
They are unable to deny that they knew how injured he was. Indeed, during their interviews, they were obsessed with it.
A lot of his body was just covered in blood, all over his arms, all over his back, his chest, his face, and he just had blood all over him.
He appeared to be burned on the upper portion of his body from the waist up.
As soon as we pulled up, I could see that his skin was brown and it was peeled back and all over his entire body.
As I approached him, I could tell clearly that it was burns on his body. In addition to that, he had lacerations, small lacerations, and little cuts and things all over him, and also appeared to have dirt and leaves and other things on him.
His skin was charred. He was just covered in blood.
Over and over again, they admit that they clearly saw how badly injured he was.
The first thing that struck me was that this man is seriously injured. I can see even from clear back at the car, he has burns. He's lost a lot of blood. He's got blood all over himself. He appears to be just kind of catatonic. He's not looking up at us. He's not doing anything. He's just sitting just like this. He's not doing anything, not doing anything, not doing anything.
Just sitting there.
I tell him I don't see a weapon. Do you? And he said no. And I told him I'm going to transition to non-lethal. I'm going to take my taser out. And so as we get out of the car and start towards him, I deadline my shotgun right there and go for my taser.
I gave him the command to show me his hands, and he showed me his hands right away.
I said, okay, I don't see any weapons, do you? And he said, no.
Some people thought he might have had a gun.
I said, okay, I don't see any weapons, do you? And he said, no.
Deputy Willard and I started to approach him, tell him to get on his stomach.
And I had my taser on the guy, and I'm talking to him the whole way I'm walking up there. I'm saying, sir, we're going to get you. I think I even went on the radio and said, code 3 medical.
Edward 2, code 3 medical, shots fired.
I think I even went on the radio and said, code 3 medical.
Code 3 medical, shots fired, shots fired, shots fired.
And I said, sir, we're going to get you some help. And really, as I got up to him and saw him sitting there in the condition of the burns, and I'm sort of assessing him physically, my main concern at that point is, well, two things. One, I decide I'm not going to let this man leave here again. I'm not going to let this man leave here. I'm not going to let this man leave. I'm not going to let this man leave here, because we'd heard some pretty bizarre behavior. But secondly, and almost as important, was I need to get this man medical help. He needs help right now. But I need to make sure we're safe. We're safe. Make sure we're safe. We're safe. Make sure we're safe. We're safe. So I tell him I need him to turn around and lay down, or to lay back and on his stomach on the concrete, on the pavement.
At what point did you see the burns to the person?
As soon as we pulled up.
Laid back on the concrete.
Have you dealt with burn victims before?
Yes, 3 times. Burned flesh on the concrete.
Did they take a first aid class? Any first aid course is going to tell you, you don't make a burn victim. Lay on the ground.
We told him to get on the ground. He said, he was saying, okay. Then he wouldn't get on the ground.
Just kind of catatonic state. Catatonic.
He wouldn't get on the ground. And we were like, get on your stomach, get on the ground. And he'd be like, okay, no.
And he looks up at me and he says, no. Catatonic state, just kind of catatonic.
He wouldn't get on his stomach, and we told him to move to the grass and get on his stomach because of the concerns about the asphalt and the heat, because it was a hot day. And he wouldn't comply with that.
And I said, you've got to do this. I need you to lay down. And he says, no, again. Then we had told him to get on his stomach or he'd be tased. You're going to be tased if you don't lay down. I repeated that several times. And again, he just kind of leaned forward and went back to just ignoring me. Just kind of catatonic.
We wanted him to lie on his stomach so that we could get him in restraints.
He's not doing anything.
Just sitting there.
Catatonic. And so I said, I told him, I said, look over there, you see the grass. I think I said, look to your right, you see the grass. And he looked over and said, yes. And I said, carefully go over there and lay down on the grass. I thought that's going to be cooler, and he might accept that. And he said, okay. And then he just sat there, and I said, you need to do that now. Go over and lay down on the grass. And he said again, okay. And I said, are you going to do that? And he just sat there. I don't think there was any response at that point. And he just sat there, and I sat, and he just sat there, and he just sat there, and he just sat there. At that point, I was just about to deploy the taser. And he just sat there, and I sat, and he just sat there. He's not doing anything.
Just sitting there.
I was just about to deploy the taser.
Why would they start tasing him? He wasn't doing anything. They've just told us he's sitting on the ground in a catatonic state. Why? Why would they start tasing him?
I was just about to deploy the taser, and the Sandy officer deployed the taser. He's not doing anything.
Just sitting there.
Just ignoring me, which was actually, from a tactical standpoint, better, because he was behind him and had the full back, which is from training, that is the actually best shot. You will affect more of the muscle tissues.
Why?
The Sandy officer deployed the taser.
And at this point, I walked behind Deputy Willard and walked around to the rear of the subject to try to get a better shot with the taser gun with him.
And he just sat there, hanging burned flesh, just sat there.
I got behind him, and at this point I had put my firearm away, and I had my taser out. and turned it on and got behind him and told him again to lay on his stomach or he'd be tased.
He appears to be just kind of catatonic.
He didn't, and at that point I discharged my taser weapon and got a good shot with the taser on. Both prongs went in his back.
Burned flesh. Seriously injured. He had loose, hanging, burned flesh.
Kind of a few times he just kind of sat there while he was, before I tased him, just kind of sat there and shook his head. Before I tased him, just kind of sat there and shook his head, sat there and shook his head, and just kind of sat there and shook his head.
This young man was very badly injured. I cannot understand how he could have been tased.
Before I tased him, just kind of sat there and shook his head.
What this is torture. There can be no other word for what these two men did here. They approached a man who was bleeding, burned, and in shock. A man who, by their own admission, was in a catatonic state and was unable to comply. And they tasered him.
And he flopped backwards on the ground.
Is this right? Is it right for a police officer to see a man who had been injured, who was in an accident, wanting to get medical aid after they were called by someone saying that there's an injured man here, when the police officers arrive on the scene with no love in their heart for an injured young man? They take out their gun, they taser, and they tase them. Is that right? No! I'm asking you the question, is that right?
No! You said that he was burned, had some burns on his body. Were these minor burns, moderate burns, severe burns?
I'm not obviously a medical person, but they seemed severe enough to me. He had loose, hanging, burned flesh, at least a couple of layers down.
And he just had blood all over him. From, I don't know if it's from a car accident, and initially saw that as soon as we pulled up.
Any civilized human being who see a young man who needs help gonna provide the necessary help to that young man without trying to tase him with his gun.
And after the first time I tased him, and just from his behavior and the ineffectiveness of the taser, you know, I even made the comment to Deputy Willard because of his behavior, and like, I don't want to get hands-on with this guy.
Don't want to get hands-on? All he's done is just sit there on the ground. They keep saying how scary he was, how much of a monster he was. This makes it easier in their minds to justify what they have done.
I just knew that if we were to get hands-on with him in a physical fight, I mean, there would have been no stopping him. I mean, he would have not felt anything.
But what was so scary? So far, all they've said is that he was bloody. That's it. When you get right down to it, nothing in their description of this man makes him seem dangerous, except their assertions that they were afraid of him.
The first time I tased him.
When he did that, the guy went on his back, flat out, proned out on his back on the ground, and was shaking a little bit, fairly typical of somebody who is taking an electrical shock. And then, when he was all done, when that 5-second shot was done, I said to him, you need to do what we ask you to do. We need you to get over and lay down on that grass. If you don't do what we ask you to do, you're going to get tased again. You need to do what we're asking you to do. It's kind of catatonic. He just catatonic, sat there. He just sat there. You're going to get tased again. And at this point, I think was right around that time, the thoughts, and I'm still looking at him and assessing him, and I start thinking, I don't want this guy anywhere near me. And I'm thinking, if he complies, what am I going to do? And if he complies, what am I going to do? If he complies, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to wait until other officers get here before we do anything. Somebody needs to glove up before they touch this man. He's got blood literally from head to toe, and multiple lacerations and cuts and dirt. And I didn't want to touch this man. I really felt there was a real risk to my safety and to the officer that was there if we weren't protected before we came in physical contact with this man. And I didn't want to touch this man. There was a real risk to my safety and my safety, my safety.
Just sitting there, just sitting there, just sitting there, sitting there. And we again told him to roll on his stomach or he'd be tased, roll on his stomach or he'd be tased. Deputy Willard, at this point I saw that Deputy Willard also had a taser out and attempted to tase him.
I deployed my taser at the same time.
The prongs from my taser were still in him while he was on his back on the ground.
He had loose, hanging, burned flesh.
So I did another pull the trigger with the taser.
And I noticed it appeared that one of the barbs actually was a good hit, and the other one was in him, and he was getting the shock from my taser, but it wasn't really, it stuck and it hung on him.
And at this point, he started laughing and giggling while I was tasing him the second time. In
any case, I was thinking that at this time and telling him to obey us or he would be tased again, tased again.
Then he sat up while he was sat up again,
and he started to get up on his left side and was looking right at me, and that is the first time that I realized he was also growling at me.
They repeatedly refer to him as an animal, or like an animal. As if in being like an animal, he was like someone we could kill without sanction. They subtly use language to make him into someone they think we can forgive them for shooting without mercy.
That's the only way I can describe it. It was just kind of a low level, and he was showing his teeth. And I remember he was showing his teeth because I saw some of the blood, and one side or the other of his teeth was running down, and it just looked sort of bizarre, and he was growling with his teeth out. And so he started to go up on his side towards me, and the Sandy police officer hit the taser again. He tased again, tased again, hit the taser again.
Why did the police react in such a brutal and vicious way upon this young man who needs medical help? Why didn't they call for the paramedic?
This time he fell back on his back, and it appeared to me that the taser was still being deployed when he started sitting up. If he complies, what am I going to do? Turn around and lay down. Go over there and lay down on the grass.
Move to the grass.
And he said, okay. Go over there. Just sat right there. You need to do that now. Go over and lay down on the grass.
They set him up in such a manner that there was no way for him to comply.
If he complies, what am I going to do? He started sitting up. He still, while we're tasing him, comes forward. You can see him still getting shocked. He's getting the electrical current, and he gets up. Go over there and lay down on the grass.
And at this point, the subject got up.
And so he started to go up on his side towards me.
And he was growling and laughing still.
And the Sandy police officer hit the taser again, hit the taser again. Oh my gosh, he's being tased and he's still getting up. If he complies, what am I going to do? He reached back and knocked my one barb off, because I remember watching that drop to the ground. And then he took off running away from us. Running away from us.
When he started to run away from us,
go over there and lay down on the grass.
Away from us.
Well, I started to go after him to get close enough so that the taser would continue to be effective. Tased again. He turned and faced us.
And then he started growling again.
And I went for another reload. Tased again. You're going to get tased again. And he, as soon as, just almost at the same time he turned around, he started screaming, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, and running right towards me.
And then started to charge at Deputy Willard, yelling, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you.
I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. Each time the officers say this, they repeat it exactly twice in the same dead monotone voice, as if it had been rehearsed.
I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you.
I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you.
I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you.
There were 9 other witnesses close enough to see and hear everything that happened. Not one of them heard Mr. Kaady scream, "I'm gonna kill you," at the officers. Not one.
I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you.
I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you.
Deputy David Willard told investigators, quote, he started screaming, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, running right towards me. I was scared.
There was no possible place for him to have concealed a weapon, and they know that. He couldn't have been a threat. It doesn't matter what he said, but you know what? He didn't even say that.
I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you.
I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you.
I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you. And that was that sort of was a little weird and extremely frightening.
There was no gun. There was no knife.
Could you estimate his height, how tall he was?
I would put him probably 5'10" or 11.
Okay. What kind of build did he have?
He had a medium to thin build.
Okay.
Extremely frightening because of the blood, and because of the strength that he had displayed.
Remember again that Fouad Kaady had no weapon.
At this point, while he was starting to charge at Deputy Willard and yelled as, I'm going to kill you and growl you, and he was growling, I saw Deputy Willard retreat.
I started to run around the rear of the police car, and I looked back and he was gaining on me, and he was about 3 to 4 feet behind me.
And at the same time, he was growling like a wild animal. A wild animal.
Again, still screaming, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, and making this kind of claw look with his hands. And intermittently growling. I ran around the rear of the police car, and that's when I decided that this man needed to be stopped. I couldn't let him go. I was scared.
And he ran between us, and I had concerns that if he's charging at Deputy Willard, that he might get at Deputy Willard's shotgun. And I also saw that Deputy Willard had another item in his hand, and I was concerned that was a weapon that he could get at and use on either Deputy Willard or me.
I tossed the taser on the trunk of the police car.
I can't get my taser in my holster, so I just tossed away the taser. I tossed it up on the windshield of my car.
And I transitioned to my handgun.
And I got my firearm out. And at this point, the subject jumped up onto the hood of my car, did a running leap onto the hood of my car, and at this point, Deputy Willard was at the rear of my patrol vehicle.
As I turned back around, I saw him leap. I don't know if he touched a foot on the trunk or on the front, but it appeared that he went right from the ground to the top of the police car.
Growling like an animal, like a wild animal. And then he jumped up onto the hood, or the roof of my car, still charging towards Deputy Willard, screaming, I'm going to kill you, and growling like an animal.
And he was up on the very top of the Sandy police car, towards the rear window, jumping up and down on the car, and growling and screaming, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you.
And at that point, while he was still kind of in the running position on top of the roof of my car,
I came up on him. I remember taking a look across my front sights right at him and yelling for him. I remember clearly yelling 2 things. One, I'm the police and you need to get down. And I don't remember if I said police or sheriff. But I identified myself and I said, you need to get down, you need to get down, get down, get down. I'm yelling at him. And I'm sure this is all just a matter of a few seconds, but it seemed like a long time. And at one point, he appeared to be lunging forward towards us as I also at that point, I was aware that the Sandy police officer had come around to that side of the car too and was right next to me.
I was located towards the rear of my vehicle.
And I wasn't consciously aware of what he was doing, but I was on him, and I think I yelled, shoot. I might not have. I might have just been thinking it. But in any case, when it appeared he was going to leap off of the car at me,
like an animal, like a wild animal.
I fired.
I fired several shots at him. I fired.
And I know that I fired 2 very quick succession rounds. He's not doing anything,
Just sitting there.
He stepped back on the car and stopped jumping, and then it appeared that he was going to come towards us, but down towards the trunk. I don't see any weapons.
There was no gun.
I fired one more round.
Until he was down.
And at almost simultaneously with firing that last round, his right foot slipped on the rear window of the car, and he fell on his back on the right against the lower right rear window, and then hit the car and slid off of the car head first. I remember hearing his head hit the ground, and then he fell down on the ground.
Suspect is down.
Suspect is down.
And they should have been giving help to this man, and they murdered him.
What was the subject's reaction when he was shot?
I guess shocked would be the best way to describe his reaction.
Indeed, we're all shocked, and we're even more shocked that the system has allowed them to get away with it.
Police were justified in the shooting death of an unarmed man last month outside of Sandy.
They chose to use tasers. They chose to use their weapons. They arrived at the scene certainly with the intent to use those weapons, as they arrived with their guns unholstered, with a shotgun that was loaded and ready to shoot, according to the deputies involved. So clearly their intent was to get there and use force if necessary from the very beginning, rather than considering other alternatives and rather than evaluating the behavior as a potential case of, maybe this man is suffering from the injuries that he suffered because of the accidents in which he found himself that day.
Why did they do this?
Here, in their own words, is the real reason that police murdered Fouad Kaady.
While you were looking at your sights at him with the gun pointed at him, what were you thinking? What were you thinking?
I was thinking, I don't want this man touching me. I don't want him getting on me.
Fouad was 27 years old. He was my brother. Excuse me. It's really hard to be without him. He's a big part of my life.
Miller, 11539. 1175, someone down?
Shots fired, yes.
They killed him because they were cowards and because he was bloody.
What were you thinking? What were you thinking? And you had mentioned that you had concerns about this man making contact with you. What were those concerns and risks?
In my training as a police officer, I've had a number of classes that involve education regarding bloodborne pathogens and the hazards of those. My concerns were probably first and foremost hepatitis. This man was behaving as if he was on some sort of drugs. I know through my training that hepatitis is fairly common among IV drug users, and for a number of reasons. And so my first and foremost concern was hepatitis, and then secondly the potential for the AIDS virus being also transmitted through blood. and with the volume of blood that he had on him, even with standard precautions, gloves and a mask, it would have been very possible to get blood in my eyes or my mouth, or and I actually even had a little open wound on the tip of one of my fingers at the time that I was concerned about.
Okay.
That's why he shot Fouad Kaady to death, because he was bloody.
What were you thinking? What were you thinking?
And my actual thought was, it's weird, it was all in slow motion, but my actual thought was, I can't let this man get me. I can't let him touch me. He has to be stopped, but I can't let him touch me because of the blood. Because of the blood, because of the blood, because of the blood, covered with blood. The blood thing was really bothering me.
Why didn't they call for the paramedic?
I had I just knew that he was either had a very bad mental health problem or was definitely under the influence of drugs or a combination of both.
The sheriff's office is releasing its incident reports. You can see how extensive this investigation was. According to witnesses, there was something wrong with Kaady that morning. He acted erratically and wore only a sport coat and pants.
When the police kill someone, the system is vested in justifying it. And so they and their apologists in the corporate media set about looking for dirt on the victim, trying to convince us that he or she was someone we should not care about. They grasp at any straw.
Wore only a sport coat and pants, only a sport coat and pants, sport coat and pants. Witnesses say he looked like he was high.
Apparently they hoped to uncover some past skeleton that might shame him into obscurity. But in this case they found nothing they could use. No drug abuse, no criminal background, no family problems, nothing. He was clean.
Only a sport coat and pants. He looked like he was high.
And alas, this is an all too familiar pattern. When the police kill someone, if the person had ever taken drugs, ever been arrested before, ever found themselves living on the streets, these are the things they tell us on the evening news. Never who the person was or how many people cared about him or her, or how wrong it was to shoot him, but only the things that might help make a case against the victim.
Wore only a sport coat and pants, only a sport coat and pants, sport coat and pants.
Anything that makes him or her different.
He then overpaid for cigarettes with a large jar of change.
Anything that might stigmatize the victim.
Toxicology results for Fouad Kaady have not been made available yet.
And the big question tonight, was Kaady on drugs?
Anything to distract the public from the real crime, the crime that was committed by the police. In the reports detailing the investigation into Fouad Kady's murder, we learn nothing about why two police officers would approach an unarmed, bleeding man with tasers drawn. No details about their past, nothing to explain their behavior, no drug tests on them. I think the most egregious thing of all is that in their own words, they wouldn't change a thing. They would do it all again.
In hindsight, do you think the incident could have been approached in a way that presented less risk to yourself or others?
No.
Do you have any suggestions for improving relevant sheriff's office training?
No.
I call him a bastard. I call him a criminal. I call him a Gestapo. That's what I call him.
Not only do they not seek redemption, they would actually do it again.
This is a tragic event, and but we're going to learn from every event that we go through. We're going to learn.
Do you have any suggestions for improving relevant sheriff's office training?
No.
They tased, tortured, and shot to death a wounded, unarmed, bleeding man. And they say they would do it all again.
He should not be dead, he should be alive. And the officer is probably still working and still carrying a gun.
The Sandy police officer involved in the shooting is already back at work. The deputy involved is not back to work yet, but could resume duties before this internal review is finished.
A shooting review board cleared 2 officers in the shooting of Fouad Kaady last September.
And the Sheriff's Office Shooting Review Board also determined that the deputy did not violate policy.
Those officers were justified.
No criminal wrongdoing in the shooting. The board of police members reviewed the case.
Under any other circumstance, if you're a lawyer, if you're a judge, and there's a conflict of interest, there are ways by which you actually recuse yourself. In this situation, the shooting review board was composed solely of officers, of fellow officers, and so whether their findings are completely accurate or not, people are unlikely to believe them. There's no confidence in that because they're the perpetrators of this incident. So how are they going to be investigating themselves? It's really preposterous. You will never find out what happens. And I think people want answers. I think people want transparency. I think people want to feel safe in their own community.
Appropriate tactics were used and/or proper equipment was utilized during the incident.
There was not enough evidence to file criminal charges against the 2 officers involved.
Looking back, several other grand juries cleared police officers in controversial shootings.
He was shot, and everyone wanted to justify it, saying that the officer have a right to shoot this man. There is not enough outcry in the community to say the officer was wrong. When a police officer kills someone and he's wrong, we as a community must hold him accountable. We gotta hold the system accountable. We cannot allow this young man to die, allow his family to endure this pain without we, the community, hold these criminals accountable for what they have done.